What's up, Weirdos? I'm Chris Weir, and this is episode number 37 of the Daily Weirdo, and we are live today talking about how to determine if you need to hire employees. Now, first of all, if you are at the point that this conversation is even relevant to you, congratulations. Many small businesses never even get to the point where they're able to even consider hiring employees, so kudos to you. But even if you're planning to hire employees one day in the future and just not quite there yet, I believe you will still get some value here today. Now, let me start by sharing a little bit about my experience in hiring so you kind of understand my perspective, at least, and where I'm coming from. My first management position that required me to interview and hire employees was at the age of 16 when I worked in the produce department of the local grocery store. Every single position I have held after that has required me to hire employees. Just prior to college, I began working as a key hourly manager at a full-service restaurant and bar. Also during that time, I founded a nonprofit organization that produced concerts and events. That was fun. After college, I worked at two different food manufacturing plants where my employee count ranged from 20 to literally 500 plus employees. And from there, I entered the mortgage business and then a short stint in the media world with an online newspaper before eventually opening my own ad agency in 2010. Now, I was also in the military between the online newspaper and my agency, but I didn't hire anyone in the military, so that's really not relevant for this conversation. But the reason I shared all of that experience is I have literally hired thousands of employees over the past 2.5 decades. I've hired low-skilled minimum wage employees to very high-skilled individuals with advanced degrees. I've made great hires and some really dumb ones. But looking back on all of these hires, the single most important lesson I learned over time was how to plan my hiring needs. A small business's first hire is usually a position to take some of the workload off of the owner. But the first hire has to be very strategic because you'll obviously have an increase in expenses from having the employee. Their compensation, benefits, payroll taxes, and additional equipment and space. So this hire create a situation that will allow for an increase in revenue to take place in the business. Now, that doesn't always mean a new salesperson. For instance, with my current ad agency, my first hire was a digital generalist. He can do SEO, social media, and website design, which right now is our most requested services. So by sharing some of that work with him, I'm able to take those hours gained and put them toward my own marketing and sales efforts, which hopefully will result in increased revenue. Now, I realize that every business is different in some ways, but no business can survive without profit. And when total employee compensation makes up between 40 to 80% of most businesses' budgets, clearly and strategically defining your hire needs is crucial. To do this for 2-Second Media, I actually just created a simple P&L with all possible income and expense line items I could think of. Not just those we have today, but any we may have in the future. And then I just created revenue columns with each column moving up in revenue $10,000 each time. So, my first column, I projected what services we would be producing to create $10,000 per month in revenue. The next column, I projected what services we would be producing to create $20,000 per month, and so on and so on. Obviously, my projections are a guess, but I spent a lot of time really thinking about the business and the market I'm in, and I really tried very hard to make the most educated guess possible on what services we were most likely to sell. By doing that, I can define what expenses I'm going to incur to produce those projections. For instance, I knew out of the gate social media management would be one of the biggest revenue generators we would have. So, by creating that visual in the revenue section of my spreadsheet, I was able to easily define what expenses I would need to make that revenue happen. I need a digital employee, a new computer, a desk, a chair, certain software, and stuff like that. Then, just like a P&L, I could look at my totals at the bottom and see what revenue level I needed to reach to support those expenses. This layout gives me a visual of my next 15 hires I'm going to need. So I'm already being strategic about my recruiting efforts and thinking down the road, opposed to being stressed when all of a sudden the need for an employee hits and I'm not prepared. So always have a very clear visual of your current and projected needs. Once you have a couple of years under your belt, you'll then have past numbers that you can add into the mix, which really begins to make this process more accurate. Now, I'm not an accountant or a financial advisor, and like most who've been in business for a while, I too recommend you spend the minimal dollars needed to get professionals to help you in that area. But I have been around long enough to know that most of you won't. So I have included a link in the description for you to download the spreadsheet that I created and I use every day for 2-Second Media. Take it, modify it for your business. It'll give you a really good look at whether you're ready to hire employees or not. But remember, this is a living document. You don't create it and leave it. You have to look at it every month. Are you hitting your projections? Are your product or service sales matching what you projected? Are you selling more of a service or product A than you planned? If so, how does that change your expenses? And then continually make those adjustments on your spreadsheet so you have a clear visual of your business performance.